investors. And so he said, well, I need you to go do a presentation for me. So I literally saw this presentation at about 2:30, and I got my tapping shoes on and I came out to it. But I was super excited to come out and do this because, First Capital's got a good model. We got a lot of great team members on the team, and I'm happy to get the message out in terms of what we do for companies or inventors like you that have products that are looking for help. My background, I'm an Air Force Academy grad from '91. Spent 5 years active duty in the military, primarily operations management. So that's where I got a lot of my operations background. I got them to pay for an MBA as well, so check that box. When I got out of the military, I went to law school at CU. So got a law degree focusing on entrepreneurial law, M&A, securities, financing, all that kind of stuff. Then I went out to Silicon Valley. I worked in the Palo Alto office of Brobeck, Flager, and Harrison. So this was late 90s, 2000. And at the time, they were probably one of the top 3 kind of high-tech and emerging growth company law firms in the country. I was in their Palo Alto office. They had probably 4 or 5 offices in California, and then in Texas and New York, and kind of across the country. Probably did 40 or 50 VC financings over a 4-year period, number of IPOs, M&A work, just working with a lot of emerging growth companies. In '03, I came back, and I was with the firm of Brownstein, Hyatt, and Farber, which you guys may know. It's one of the larger Denver-based firms. Again, doing a lot of corporate M&A work, some real estate work. But my passion was in growth companies. And at the time, you mentioned Quiznos. At the time, Quiznos was a small but budding franchise company. And so I got the chance to go be Associate General Counsel at Quiznos. I joined when they had about 1,500 stores, and we grew it from 1,500 stores to about 5,500 stores in about a 3.5 year period. So I was fortunate to be there during their huge growth phase, got a lot of great experience, both from just growing a company and all the legal issues that come with being smaller and getting bigger, raising capital. We went, did over $2 billion in transactions during that 3.5 year phase, both lines of credits. We did the second ever franchise royalty securitization. The last deal that we did was a private equity transaction, $1.5 billion private equity transaction where had JP Morgan on the equity side. We had Lehman, which no longer exists. They were on the debt side. Just a lot of great, it was a great kind of growth company experience for me. Then they got really big, and I'm like, I don't like big companies. I want to go small again. And so since then, I've been involved with a couple of different smaller kind of growth companies, both from a general counsel, CFO, COO standpoint. So kind of my background is ops, finance, and legal for the most part. I met Gary Graham, and what was exciting about his model is that he gets to work with a lot of growth companies. I was kind of inside companies, which was cool. But when he approached me, he's like, I need a COO/general counsel to help drive First Capital. And for me, that was an opportunity to meet a lot of inventors with cool products and cool ideas and help them build companies. And so that's how I got here. First Capital is effectively what we call a business accelerator. I know that term is probably has multiple definitions, but in our case, we have a team of folks in different areas of expertise: finance, legal, strategy, marketing, PR, ops, legal, obviously. And what we do is we kind of can bring all the expertises to your product and basically help commercialize it. We're not a consultant. There's consultants that'll come in and say, based on your technology, here's what we think you should do. Here's a report. Good luck, and let me know how it goes. We actually have to help you generate that plan, and then we come in as effectively part of the team and help execute the strategy. And so it's effectively trying to accelerate the growth of the company by building a business around the technology, and then helping you raise capital so you can get from A to B, faster and better than you would possibly on your own.
You guys are actually running the company.
Yeah, in many cases, and typically we'll step in, like a couple of companies that we're working with now. Gary Graham is kind of the interim CEO, and our finance guy is kind of interim CFO. Again, those are companies where the inventor has realized that they're super smart on the technology, but they don't maybe understand business. They don't know how to execute a business strategy. Maybe they don't understand finance. And so we'll step in as interim kind of executive management to help you drive the business. So that's what we call an accelerator. We want to help bring in our expertise. I mean, you as a small business, you can't hire a CFO and a CEO and a CMO and a CTO and with the full suite. So what we can do is we can bring that in on an interim basis and help build the business around the technology. So with that, I'll jump into the presentation. And I like a lot of discussion, so any questions, feel free to talk, and I may ask you guys for input, or it's definitely more interesting that way. All right, so and my background, so 20 years legal finance ops experience, executive management, just done a bunch of deals. I think I covered all that stuff. Yep. Okay. So I put the slide up for a reason. Can anybody tell me what they think, what these two things are, and why they might, what the distinction might be?
Was the video cassette fight between the beta format and the VHS, right?
The VHS and beta. And which was the better technology?
Beta.
Whose better quality was beta,
Mm-hmm.
but VHS won.
And why do you guys think they won?
Porn.
Did you say? I'm not going to repeat that on the mic. But.
It was the rental industry and the porn industry.
Okay.
The VHS guys licensed all their stuff so they could get the video rental industry out there. The beta guys weren't open for distribution of certain styles of video.
Mm-hmm.
And the rental market just crushed the beta guys. We had a beta player when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
but the beta section went away in the stores because the VHS has a much better way of licensing.
Yeah, that's a reason I wasn't gonna. I didn't know that. but the point of it is that there's more than just the technology, right? We knew beta was a better technology, but what helped drive VHS, other than porn, in my opinion, is the marketing and the strategy and the business plan and the execution of the business plan. Oh, you have a comment? No, you want some of his tapes, right? Again, this is probably an obvious example. Obviously, BlackBerry was first in the market. Arguably, technologies are probably different, but similar technologies. And who's winning the battle now? The iPhones are killing it. I know when they first came out with the iPhone, I'm like, that's silly. Apple's making phones? It didn't make any sense to me. But through their business strategy and marketing and execution, they've become, obviously one of the leaders in the marketplace. So what's your goal? Do you want to build a company or make money? I think a lot of times we'll come across two types of inventors. You either Bill Gates or you're not. And what I mean by that is, he seemed to be able, obviously he was a great technologist, but he also seemed to have, good business savvy. And so he was able to grow Microsoft to, the company that it became. There's other inventors that they're, incredible technologists, but they don't necessarily have the business skills. And it's really just recognizing what you're good at and what you're not. I couldn't design a device, right? I'm not a software developer. I couldn't do that stuff, but I can do a credible finance model. I can do your legal docs. And so I know where I'm strong. I know where I'm weak, and so I focus on where I'm strong. And so the folks that we typically fit well with are the folks that they realize are really strong in technology, but they want to bring in other expertise in other areas to help them grow the business. So that's you get two types, and we've there's been a couple companies that we've worked with where the technologist was also a really strong business person, but they're not strong at everything. So that he may be a good strategy guy, but he doesn't really know finance, or he doesn't obviously know legal or marketing. Marketing and PR, that's huge, and that's definitely a pretty specialized area. So what works for us is making sure that we believe in the technology and the business opportunity, and then looking at what strengths and weaknesses the inventor or entrepreneur has, and then we can come in and kind of fill in the gaps, kind of build around that team. A couple things we always run into is just make sure you're honestly self-assessing your strengths and weaknesses, because that's key. The idea is focus on what you're really strong on, and then bring in the expertise in the areas that you're not so strong. So the core components obviously starts with an idea, an invention, and prototype, but we would argue that's just the start. And there's so many technologies that it may be a phenomenal technology, but if you don't execute the business plan around the technology, it ends up not really going anywhere. So it's really important to focus on operations and administration. So building kind of the foundation behind the technology. Obviously, sales and marketing to drive the awareness and the penetration for the product. Accounting, finance, and capital, which I'll talk more about. And then most importantly is building the team. And I think if you go to any of the venture capital sites, or you research venture capital, and they'll say, what are VCs? What are the top three things they focus on? When they're going to invest in a company. And I can guarantee you on the, for every VC, it may be first, second, or third, but it's going to be management team. Management team is what's going to drive their interest. In fact, you see multiple examples where VCs will invest in the same guy going from company to company because they realize that guy knows how to execute a business plan. So identifying that management expertise and bringing the right skill set to the company makes a huge difference.
You might also mention that, well, from an investor's perspective, the team and the execution account for more than product technology.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to Roger's point, I mean, without a doubt, you can have an incredible technology, but without the management team and the ability to execute the business plan, and what is it, 9 out of 10 businesses fail, and it's not necessarily because of the technology, it's just because they don't have a sound business plan and clear strategy, and they haven't been able to execute that business plan. Ops and administration, this is almost like a bunch of clowns running around doing a bunch of different things, and so it's obviously critical to make sure all the things are working together. A lot of cogs in the machine, and I think a lot of folks, they're just trying to develop the prototype and get it out to the market. But it's also important to make sure you're building the systems and processes around the company so everyone works efficiently and in sync. Sales and marketing, and this is another key part. You think it's always the best technology that wins? And I think we've already kind of had a couple examples that it's not always the best technology that wins. There's rarely uniform user adoption. And, I guess the example that we often use is, I mean, everyone's wearing a different shirt, but it's not, I don't have the best shirt, and you don't have the best shirt, and you don't have the best shirt. We all bought these shirts for some reason, and it wasn't because it was the best shirt. It was because it appealed to us in some way, or there were some sales or marketing edge that drove our interest in the shirt. So same thing, you can have the best technology, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have a successful business plan. So driving and really understanding the market, really understanding the marketing strategy, building that out, and then having a sales force that can execute on that marketing strategy and penetrate the market is key. Accounting, finance, and capital. The first thing we always hear when we get a new client is, how fast can you get me money? And which is we try to do it as fast as we can, and that's certainly important. But it's a lot of times they focus on that at the expense of everything else. And so what we really try to focus on in this area is make sure you really understand the business model and the finance and accounting behind that. And for me, it's always the first thing I always say is let me see your financial model. Typically, the VCs want to see 5 years out, and they want you to understand all the assumptions. And honestly, if you build out a really detailed financial model, it's going to force you to understand the business. What are all the assumptions? What are your market segments? How is this product going to penetrate this market segment? What's pricing look like? What do the costs look like? How many different segments am I going to hit? So the financial model makes you go through and think about every little assumption that it's going to drive every little component of the model from a revenue standpoint and from a cost standpoint. And that's also the top 3 things VCs want to see. They want to make sure that you have a really solid financial model that's thoughtful and it's based on reasonable assumptions. Another key thing is manage to a budget. Again, we'll have folks come in and we'll say, I need $1 million. And we'll say, well, what do you need $1 million for? Or how'd you get to that number? Like, I don't know, $1 million sounded about right. I think I need this and this and this. And what we do is, first of all, make sure the financial model supports the capital requirement. So your model should say, if it's a 12 to 18 month model, here's what I hope to get in the next 12 to 18 months, and here's the cash that I need based on that model. And that says $1 million, that's great. Secondly, what are you going to spend it on? A really clear use of proceeds, and then make sure you manage the budget. It's so easy as a younger company to just think you need to spend money on all these things. I think we just are there. It's just really important to understand how much you need, why you need it, that the financial model supports that, and then how you're going to use it, and that you're disciplined in the expenditures of those monies. Because I know that from day one when we start creating a financial model, the first thing I ask the company is, give me your P&L. You give me your historical P&L. Because then I can see exactly, hopefully your books are decent, which is actually the next bullet. But I take that P&L and I look at what you spent the money on, and then we project forward based on kind of some of your historical.
So I know there's a bunch of different models as far as like awareness and like population, but what do you guys see as acceptable as far as like what the user base versus user trial will be in like the initial setup for finances? For like so you're like, okay, well we have this great product. Here's our potential market. How do you generate more specific numbers instead of just making up fairy tale numbers?
A lot of marketing research. In fact, we have a potential client that we're working with right now, and we actually told them before we can engage, we want to make sure we understand what the real market potential is. And so we've actually engaged a marketing consultant to go out and do actual studies on different segments, so we can really understand. You know, you can think that we think this segment's the easiest to penetrate, or the lowest hanging fruit, but it's kind of subjective. And so we're actually hiring a marketing consultant to go out and do some initial research to help us be more objective and analytical about that, or more scientific about those market segments. And in that research, he'll also come back to us with not only how penetrable this market is, but what are the best ways to do it, what does the pricing structure look like. And so we don't like to kind of wing it. We like to try to use a more scientific approach whenever we can. Last bullet was just accounting. I know we're all too busy to do the books and account for this and account for that, but I know when we come into a business, the more of this that you have down, the easier it is to come in and really understand where the company's been, identify the holes and the opportunities, and then from that build the model going forward.
Brent, is there any how embryonic will you guys take on the company? Like, does the idea have to be developed to a point?
I call it stage 2. That's what I refer to it as. So not startup in the sense you got a great idea. But you haven't done any development, any prototyping. We like to come in. Our goal is to really take the company and literally within a year, ideally 6 to 9 months, and get that first taste of commercialization. So we like to have a prototype to start with, whether it's initial app or a technology. Maybe you've done some
functional prototype at least.
Yeah. And you're maybe you have your first pilot test program. Because our job is to try to take that prototype and then build a business structure around it and help you commercialize it. And 6 to 9 months, help you raise capital.
What type of products are you usually interested in?
We definitely have technology, and ideally disruptive. That's the funnest things to work on. I've only been with First Capital, going on 4 or 5 months now. Historically, it's always been technology. We're looking at one now who is, I guess I'd call it tech light. But the team, the inventors, they're a great team, and I think there's a lot of potential in the product. So I would never say not technology, but that's really real opportunities.
That's big. What does technology mean to you? Electronics, automobiles, airplanes? What's technology?
Yeah, it's broad, and normally it comes at us, right? We actually looked at a drone deal, so we've done that. We've done a robot deal. We're doing a project right now on a company that they develop basically a SaaS platform for smart building management. So how to integrate all your different alarms and beepers and all that kind of stuff, and have it on a platform that's active and smart. We've done brain imaging software. So it's kind of pretty open. We don't nothing energy, nothing oil and gas. I could probably go. If you told me one, I could probably tell you yay or nay. But
consumer products.
Yes. We actually looked at a deal. We didn't pick up the client, but you have all these little gadgets that you clip to your bag, and they can tell you where it's at, like little Bluetooth kind of driven tags, right? And this particular company wasn't really a good fit for us, but that was definitely a consumer product. Anyway.
You said that you want your client to produce a prototype before you thinking about investing in them, right?
Right.
Would you expect them to do market research too and all that, or is that something you guys do?
That would be part of it. Like the one client that I was just talking about. We want to engage with them, but we also want to make sure that that we've tested the market. And so depending on where you came to us, if you hadn't done that yet, and it was we thought that it was worthwhile to spend that money, then we would recommend that. it just depends. Like some clients come to us and they've already had like a couple pilot test programs, so they've already have some market validation. So as long as you have something that you can walk in and plunk it down the desk, or here's my app, or here's my SaaS platform, and it's something we can at least kind of get our hands around. What we don't do is, I've got this great idea for this thing, come to us once you have something that we can work with, because we try to accelerate the process pretty quickly and get involved earlier. That's just a different kind of phase. That's more, you've heard incubators. I'm sure you guys have all heard of incubators. That's kind of what they do. Is they'll take you with an idea and try to get you to what I call stage 2, is a prototype in hand, and really trying to drive the commercialization of that. Make sure I didn't skip a slide. Okay. So what we consider the lifeblood of anything is the team, and the personnel and the team is definitely the key to being able to drive the business and drive the strategy. How do you build a team? That's one thing that we do help do. I mean, initially we have the various expertises that will come in and supplement the business and build out those areas. But also, we're not going to be with you forever. Our engagement is anywhere from 6 months to a year, and it's really just to get you to that point. And so part of our process is we actually help identify the right executive management. In a lot of cases, there's been some cases in the past where we've tried to put a whole team in, but what we found is what's ideal is to find the right CEO. So if you find the right CEO and put him in place, him or her, then that person will build. He'll come in and assess the strengths and weaknesses, and he'll bring in his people, which is actually when you bring in a bunch of high-level people all at once, then it's you kind of have jockeying for a position and all that. So once the inventor realizes, I really need a CEO to come in and help run with this thing, we help identify that CEO through we have recruiting partnerships with different recruiting firms. So we'll identify an expert in that area that helps that can bring that expertise. And a lot of times it's a CEO that's already done 2 or 3 or 4 companies, and so they have that experience. Bring them in, they integrate well with the inventor, and then they kind of helps build the team around that core team. Some obvious pitfalls. One is I know as inventors, it's they're like your babies, right? And it tends to kind of skew your thought process a little bit. One is you think it's got to be the greatest idea on the planet, and that's why a lot of times the market research will bear that out. Sometimes not so much. So trying to remain objective about it and make sure you really understand the market. What segments, what problem is that thing fixing or fulfilling, and making sure you're understanding the market need. Because without a market need, it's kind of hard to have a business to build that around. Oftentimes, folks will come to us and say, "Well, we don't really have competition." I was like, "Well, if you think you don't have competition, it's either not a market or you haven't researched it hard enough." I mean, there are rare cases where you might be first to the market with an idea, and there's also ways that you can create a market with a new idea, but that's a large hurdle. But really understanding your being objective about your invention, and also a lot of folks will say, "Well, I don't want to give up 20% of my company or 50% of my company or whatever," but that's just that's part of the process. To bring in expertise, both from a management level, to bring in an investment, that's just part of the process. One of the companies that I worked with, we had a signed term sheet on the table with one of the top private equity firms, top 10 private equity firms in the world. Of course, they were pushing the terms, and they kept asking for a little bit more and more of the company. And finally, the founders, who are also the board, said, "Well, I don't want to give up X amount of my company. Sorry, we're not going to do the deal." So now they got 100% of this much, whereas they could have had even 49% of this much. Is still a pretty darn good deal. And so it's being willing to understand to bring in the team and the right investment partners and all that. Just it's going to take equity, and understanding that that's what really kind of takes you to the next level. And of course, strategy, packaging, and messaging. A lot of folks they don't take the time to really think about the business strategy. You guys have heard of the shiny object syndrome. It's like you're kind of going down here, and then you're over here, and we have one client that we're looking at maybe working with, and they have a core technology, but they're literally trying 5 different cities and 4 different market segments, and there's no way with their team of 3 people that they could effectively try to go after all those market segments. And so really just trying to have a core strategy and make sure you're focused on that. Secondly is being able to package the company, and which is a lot of what we help you do. Package the company around the technology, and then just make sure the messaging is clear, which is the kind of the marketing and the sales piece. And then what we call Apex. Obviously it's important to routinely assess your progress. Make sure you have a clear strategy, clear business plan, metrics and KPIs that you measure over time, and then hopefully you got tracking mechanisms that are looking at those things, so you can either you're going on the right track or you're not, and you can adjust. So assessing and planning, and then executing to the plan. And then again, a lot of folks are hesitant to invest in expertise, but the reality is that's kind of the cost of getting big, is you need to hire the right talent, and talent costs money and stock.
I'd say this is something I always struggle with, is trying to understand how to give out percentage and equity, because essentially you've got two very, very different things as far as cash, and if that cash has strongholds where you're getting cash and you're also getting somebody who's an expert in what you need that you maybe don't know, versus somebody who's working doing sweat equity for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have a general model that you go through, or is it just we've done this for so long, we're obviously we have a really good grasp on it, or do you guys have a training model to bring people in to show people, okay, this is how we can divvy out percentage and equity? Do you guys have a model, or is it?
Yeah, there's ranges, right? So if we're going to bring in a CEO, we know that what the range is on average for that, how much equity that CEO should get of the company. Same with CFOs, COOs, and then VPs and further down. And so we do have kind of ranges for each of those levels of position and expertise, so you don't get so out of whack. And that's why it's important to have that figured out kind of early on, because it's so easy to, here's 100,000 shares, or here's 500,000 shares, and and he happens to be your secretary or something. Now she owns 8% of the company, and then the VCs come in and say, well, what were you thinking? And so having that, and then ideally you'd already have an option plan in place, because options are the best way to. And once you give them stock, they got stock. I mean, they own part of the company, and every time you got a shareholder vote or thing, you got to get a hold of that person, make sure they get notice and all that. With options, you have the right plan in place, and it's subject to vesting. And if they leave the company, the options, the unvested options, come back. The ones they don't exercise come back. They're not shareholders, so they don't get voting rights and all that other kind of stuff. So I know when I was in the Bay Area, literally, we had the list of 8 documents when you want to start a company. Here's your articles of incorporation, your bylaws, your employment agreements, your confidentiality agreements, and here's your option plan. So literally from day one, we put that in place. So that way as you issue equity, it's primarily through the founders, and maybe the CEO might get stock, but a lot of folks, you want to just have options, because it's a lot easier to control than having a lot of stock out there. We have one of our clients that we just closed the deal on. They had a lot of stockholders, and when you come to do a financing, it's a mess. When you got to chase down 35 people to get their approval on the deal, and you always probably have 1 or 2 that aren't very happy because things didn't go their way or something. So the earlier you can get that structure in place, the better. So a lot of this is going to be, I've hit these points, just kind of a summary. The things that are going to drive success is really understanding your personal skill set. Maybe you're a finance whiz as well as a great technologist. So great, if you can build a great financial model, then that's probably something that you don't need, but maybe you need someone to help with marketing or strategy or legal. But just it's important to understand what your strengths are, and don't be afraid to bring in other expertise to balance that out.
I'm to a point where I'm ready to start trying to find a licensor or somebody to pick up a product.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend at this point? I'm self-financed, and I've got everything pretty well in line.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go to the next step.
Yeah, so a lot of that's, we jump in and try to help you define your business development strategy. In this case, if your strategy is to go after licensors or licensees, just help you work through that based on what the product is, what are the market segments, who are the key players in those markets, who are the decision makers, and it's kind of a diligence process. We're doing that with a client right now. They want to try to penetrate a couple of different market segments, and so we're actually, we're buying some lists, and we're going after trying to find decision makers and get them jazzed on the idea, and it's just networking to some extent, but also leveraging contacts that we have in the various industries. Yeah, I mean, some industries more than others, obviously. And we've done a number of deals in certain industries, and through that process have developed contacts. We have access to a number of different databases that track different VC deals, different kinds of industry deals, and typically you can through even LinkedIn, we have access to some databases that are kind of like a souped up LinkedIn that kind of help us get access to folks.
Can I ask maybe a lawyer question here? I contacted a company, they wanted me to sign one of their NDAs first before I could even submit anything to them.
Okay.
What's the pros and cons there?
They wanted you to sign their NDA?
Before I submit anything to them. Or before they look at anything, that way.
Right, you should have somebody review it before you sign it.
I'm sorry?
You should have a lawyer review
Yeah.
that before you sign it. Typically, if you're patent pending and you're just disclosing what's in the pending patent, you're pretty safe. Is it necessary? But a lot of times you're going to be talking about things outside of the patent. Business plan, strategy, financials, those and marketing plans or something. So those things can still be trade secret. But I know people that approach larger companies, a lot of them, they just won't sign NDAs because of the risk. And they'll say, if you disclose it to us, it belongs, to anyone. And if you want to protect it, you get patent pending on it. But we're not going to do an NDA because they don't want to take the time to review on them.
Yeah, and so you're actually talking about the opposite, where the big company wants you to sign an NDA.
Yeah, I contacted a company associated with my product, and they wanted me to sign their NDA.
So if you can get them to sign an NDA, that's great. To Roger's point, have it reviewed, because likely it's very one-sided in their favor. And so it'd be important to, if it's an NDA that's well-drafted and protects you, then yeah, it's great to sign it. And likely if it's a big company, it's one-sided in their favor. And so you'd want to have somebody review it and make sure that you understand the exposure that you might have.
Some license agreements can be very one-sided too.
Yeah.
It's when you're going to a big company. And so you have to be very careful because your licensee can be a horrific competitor of yours because nobody has more insider information than them. And, they can go and, I've had this happen with clients, the licensee becomes their worst recruiter.
Yeah, and when you get into licensing, it's like a multitude of complexity over NDAs. NDAs are pretty, for the most part, they're fairly plain vanilla, but they're still important to have them reviewed because if a company's given you one, likely it's in their favor.
I had this one reviewed.
Just back to this. So just make sure you understand your skill set. It's super important to have a clear strategy. Now, obviously, it'll evolve over time, but at least spend some time really thinking about what the business strategy is, what the marketing strategy is, and try to remain focused and don't always go after all the shiny objects. And also don't be overconfident in your product. Make sure you really understand the market. Right here, let's go on there. Just make sure you understand the market and really have a good sense of where your product, what its likelihood of penetrating different market segments, and to the extent that you can do market research, that always helps. Understand your business, and by this, make sure you have I can't overstress the importance of a financial model, because that's going to make you go through the exercise of really understanding your business. What are the revenue drivers? What are the cost drivers? There's so many times I'll see a financial model and they haven't, they've missed key components of their expenses or capital expenditures or research expenses, and that obviously is going to affect the profit margins and everything else. And then make sure you have a clear business plan and that you're executing to the plan. Second to last here, don't build on a shaky foundation. Make sure you have all the systems and processes in place that you can. Just operational systems and processes, employee handbook and HR stuff, accounting, books and records, even legal stuff. What will happen when a VC comes in? The cleaner your company looks. One, it's more likely to get financing. It also gives an appearance of professionalism and competence. And so if a VC comes in, you got great books and records, great financial model, minute books clean, you got all your documents, I's dotted, T's crossed. That makes a huge difference in terms of impression you make on the VC. And then lastly, remove emotion from the equation, which is management, product control, all the things I've touched on. From a management perspective, understand what you're good at, what you're not good at, and don't worry about, if you have to bring in, we have to bring in a CEO because the technologist realizes that they're just not a good executor. Without exception, it's worked out. I mean, that CEO's gotten along real well with the technologists, and they've been able to execute the business plan. And same with control. Like I said, it's more important to bring in the right expertise and the right investors, even if it means giving up some equity and or some control, because those are the folks that are going to help you really grow the business and bring your product to the market.
What, after it's all said and done, what are the founders' percent ownership on average?
Well, it's all said and done. It's like never all said and done.
Yeah. Well, probably.
Yeah.
We're Gamma too. It's like you just kind of launched a company, not super mature. But
Yeah. So typically, I'll give you an example. Initially the founders have 100%.
Right.
They may hire a couple, folks and give them 5s or 10%. Usually when we come in, we'll get a certain percent of ownership as part of our compensation. Like the deal we have coming up, a Series A investors coming in, and they're going to end up with about 30% post-closing. We're going to have about 15 to 20 post-closing. And then the balance of the shares are going to go to the founders and employees. So they'll still end up with about half. And a fair amount of that, I think the founder in this case is going to have, at that point, post-Series A financing, 26, 27%. So it's there.
about a fourth.
Yeah. But of course, then the Series B is going to come in and get a chunk, and so that he'll get crunched down. But what's happening, hopefully you're doing financings that are ascending in value. And so having, even though the Series B, you're going to maybe get crunched down a little bit more, by then the valuation should be higher to the point where your smaller percentage at that point is actually worth more than what your larger percentage was on the earlier round. What are some, I don't know, tell me what your challenges are. Like what are some of the things that you're good at, other things you're like, I need help here, I need help there?
Well, my opinion is the capital solves all problems.
Yeah.
Well, if you have enough, then you don't need to bother with the business.
Well, no, but
it's risky.
Yeah.
You go into it as a business idea, not as a charity or as sitting with a cup on the street.
Right.
But capital is always an issue because things are always more expensive than you think.
Yep.
You always have better ideas. You see more opportunities as you go along. Everybody's different. I came out of the advertising agency business, so my planning and marketing and seeing the vision is there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can also build a company. But we're looking for always new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
People who've gone down the route before is always helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So, and your information was very nice.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. What are your challenges? I mean, you're just got ideas mostly.
I'm here to learn.
Yeah.
If you have any suggestions as to, what books or websites I should look into just to know how to take a product.
Yeah, there's so many, depending on what Google's like my best friend. Just getting on there and whatever. Even now, there's still things what's interesting is more recently is all the changes in the legal landscape with crowdfunding and Kickstarter, and they just recently released new regulations on Reg A+, which has to do with smaller sized IPOs. The IPO market from 0 to 50 million was almost non-existent because at that amount of money raised, the compliance cost was just exorbitant. So no one really did IPOs in that range. They've changed all the regulations now where between 20 and 50, you can do those size IPOs, without all the Sarbanes-Oxley compliance and all the other stuff. So, for example, that's what I'm kind of really learning about now is because a lot of that could be a great financing source for a lot of our clients. Folks that are kind of, they've done the Series A and they're looking for the next round. If they're trying to raise 10, 20, 30 million bucks, all of a sudden this smaller IPO space is
Less registration burden than a full IPO.
yeah, it's
IPO
Yeah, simple, yeah, IPO light, simple registration statements. They're not, a lot of, they're, I mean, you still have to have audited financials, but you don't, Sarbanes-Oxley doesn't apply. So a lot of the heavy compliance statutes don't apply. And you're not doing quarterly reporting, you're doing just semi-annual reporting. Just a lot of things that kind of make that, it's still green, right? They're still trying to figure out that whole landscape, but yeah, so just whatever your, it's, obviously understand what your interest is, whatever your area of expertise is, understand that. And then, the more you can understand, if you have a product idea, obviously understand the market, competition, what do you think your competitive edges are going to be? Scalability is a huge thing. I mean, it's great if you can build one, but, I worked with a company, they manufactured high-end boutique guitars. They sell for $2,000 to $6,000. And this guy really wanted to grow his business. And I said, well, that's cool, but you got to let other people paint. You can't be the only painter, and you can't be the only guy that runs the machine. And so, and that was before I was with First Capital. We grew the company a fair amount, but got to the point where he wouldn't let go. And so, like when you're thinking about, if you really want to do a true growth opportunity, make sure that the thing's scalable. That's key.
What about the whole market research thing? Like, how would you? What's an easy way to do it? Say if I made a chair or something, a very specific chair to a guitar player or something. Would you just build the thing and then ask other guitar players if they'd like it? Like, how do you take that data and put it into something on paper so you could show someone like, listen, this is.
Yeah, and it's so unique. I mean, there's even, what do they call it? What is it? Chimp or monkey? Survey monkey. Yeah, we had one of our clients. They were trying to figure out market segments for this company. Manufactures a technology that they claim cleans mattresses, including kills bed bugs. And so they're trying to identify, as a hotel. User of hotels, how much do you care about the mattress? I mean, how many of you guys go to a hotel and pull the sheets back and see how clean the mattress is? So they wanted to know that, so they did a survey monkey. And they said, okay, how many people actually look at the mattress when they go to the hotel?
So that's like some hard data that you see or something?
Yeah, I mean, even people do they'll do Facebook surveys. I mean, there's, I know at least in the guitar industry, there's guitar blogs, these guitar sites where you can go on and say, what's your favorite type of wood for a guitar? And then you can gather that data. So it's pretty industry specific. Depending on again the industry and the product and what we're trying to go after, that'll drive a lot of how you do the market research. But with the tools on the internet today, it's Google can take you a long way. Somebody else that's making a chair for guitarists, Taylor Guitars, are they making one? And what do they sell it for? And who are their maybe go on their forums and figure out what they like about the chair, what they don't like about the chair. So there's no cookie cutter, answer, but that's a lot of what we help. We have a marketing PR expert on staff, and then we also have consultants that have expertise in different areas. And so that's one of the things that we would do is based on what your product was in the market, is we would help advise you on how to really understand that space.
And also, the book Gadgetation would be a good one. It's got about 100 examples of people that just started, they conceived the product, built their prototypes, probably got a patent or trademark, and then maybe got sales from 100 to 1,000. So it kind of takes you through the timing and costs, gives you an idea, lots of different products.
Yeah.
In fact, the author of that, his name is Greenberg, he was presented by Skype.
Oh, okay.
So it's a good reality check because you're probably looking for that initial startup phase, 50 to 250,000
Yeah.
Technology. You got to be realistic. It takes a fair amount of money
Mm-hmm.
to just get going.
Any other questions?
I got one.
Sure.
So you talked a lot about this, owner management, networking, growing business thing. The products that I'm developing are things that need to be built.
Okay.
So I can build these things on my desk by hand. So I'm doing now, it costs X dollars. I know my parts count go down, my parts cost goes down by Y%. This is all my financial stuff.
Yeah.
I need someone to talk to, honestly and seriously, how to build the damn thing. So yeah, I could go to China, send all my drawings overseas, but the stuff I'm developing is cheap enough that it's a pretty obvious concept once you see it. So there's not a lot of magic juice to do the patent thing.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah, yep.
But I need a CEO that knows about building things on the level of the complexity of smoke alarms and exit signs, like that type of integrated electronic kind of data.
Well, and the robot company that we worked with, they were looking at trying to manufacture things overseas, and they may in larger volume once they get to that level. But the first step was we actually identified a local manufacturer that could manufacture there. So they were able to go and actually meet with the folks and monitor that.
This is a robot company, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to sell a $500,000 robot manufacturing, I'm selling things that are $200.
Yeah.
So I need a company that wants to build things that the parts cost is less than $100.
Yeah.
And the manufacturing cost is $20, $30. That's
Mhm.
all what you can afford to make it fit in the market.
Yeah.
So the only way to get there is to go overseas. And that's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
I can't go overseas because it's so simple. So how does a burgeoning inventor with demonstrated prototypes, things that are currently under test, I'm at your stage 2 right now with my co-founders,
Mm-hmm.
and we're looking at trying to get this thing built, and everybody's giving me these astronomically high estimates to get this done. And
Okay.
there's got to be somebody in the U.S. that has a factory that can build things out of plastic and put screws in a box and not charge me $800 a piece to do it. So like, how do I find someone that does that? I've been calling all the shops in Colorado, I've been calling people in Chicago, I've been calling people in California.
Yeah.
Every single prototype, fab shop, blah, blah, blah. We need $1 million up front to do this. I need $500,000 for that. I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
there's got to be a way to do this for, it's not that expensive a product.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I do for this? Where do I find it?
Well, it's not like you. I mean, I'd probably have to dig into that a little bit more. I mean, typically we're able to find. I'm surprised you called all those folks. You haven't been able to find, at least a good lead, because the few cases that I've been involved with, we've helped, identify basically outsource manufacturing. We've been able to identify solutions that, worked economically and based on number of pieces and all that. So I'm a little surprised to hear that you're having that much of a challenge.
It's because of the level of integration, you need to drive the cost down.
Yeah.
And the technology I use spans like 3 separate industries. So I can make the circuit boards for $0. I can make other component for very low cost. I can make other component for low cost.
Yeah.
When you put all these pieces together, you end up with a very high cost option.
Yeah.
I can't find a factory that has the same set, all the skills together to do it all in one go.
Yeah.
Which is where you really get the cost down. I mean, this is a $10 product if you
Right.
find someone that has a tooling to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's an $8 product to make, and the margins don't work at $8, but they work really well at $20.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that'd be something we'd have to dig into. To be honest with you, I know we have one of our guys that's his background is operational and operational management, manufacturing, and he's the guy that normally helps identify solutions for our clients in that space. So I'd be happy to chat offline, or maybe I can pick my colleague's brain, give you a little more detailed information.
Because this is also running into some trouble with doing a business plan.
Yeah.
Because I know if I build them myself and I work for $0.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it affects the financial model and your margins and all that.
Because this is a cannabis targeted thing. I got a ton of products that will work with cannabis is the simplest one of these things. And you talk about market research, there is no data for the cannabis industry.
Mm-hmm.
So sending out surveys, we've tried that, nobody responds to them because they're all secretive.
Right.
No grower's going to tell you how much they grow. No grower's going
Right.
to tell you what their yields are. No grower's going to tell you what market lights they use. They see that all as a trade secret. So the only way to get data for this cannabis stuff is to go to the tax records. Because from then you can apply math and figure out how many square footage of law it's in, and you know how many plants you can do and all that. Am I missing things? Like, where else can I go for industry that has no data to make this kind of projection? Because the Gap's financial model looks really great, but it's literally doing this to get numbers, because there's only 12 states that it's totally legal now. Like,
Right. Well, and it's certainly that's a unique industry, right? You can't even you got to pay cash for everything because you can't use.
I can't sell on the internet because people
Yeah.
can't, so I gotta have local distribution, all that stuff too. There's a whole bunch of roadblocks that nobody I've talked to really has any useful knowledge about going through this, aside from, well, you should go to the cannabis trade shows and set up a booth. Well, okay, we've done that.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have an interest in going to buy the things, but we can't grow in any of the conventional things that everybody talks about, because I can't do e-commerce because nobody has
Yeah.
credit cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't ship over state lines really, depending on the type of product you're talking about, because I run right into all these crazy legislations, even filing a patent restriction,
Right.
because I have to word things all nebulously,
Mm-hmm.
which cuts into the intellectual property value of my potential patent, because I can't fully explain the operation, because I can't patent things after the drug paraphernalia. It's a minefield of headache, even
Yeah.
though my own headaches of inventing. And I need someone to help me figure some of
But we haven't done anything in the cannabis industry yet. We're looking at a deal. We haven't engaged yet. It's a company that's developing an app, kind of a Groupon-like app that's focused on the cannabis industry. We haven't accepted that. We haven't engaged that deal yet. So I can't really, I don't have any expertise in that. I mean, I know it's got tons of challenges. I know a friend of mine, he's an architect, and he's doing building design for, grow houses. And they have to pay him in cash because he can't take a check. And so there's definitely some odd hurdles in the cannabis industry.
Because I'm selling basically ancillary products. I'm not selling them directly, but
Yeah.
products that we've developed specifically to help you grow your agricultural products.
Yeah. Well, and we're happy to have you come in. And we can sit down with some of the guys on the team. They may have a little more knowledge in that industry, and it doesn't cost you anything. So yeah, it'd be great to carry it on further. Other questions?
How do you, this is another big thing that I've kind of run into trouble with. A lot of people talk about like measuring utility as far as like if you have a competitor's product, you want to get 10 times the utility. That's just a general reference for your deal. But how do you measure consumer utility and how they will perceive utility unless you have a bunch of prototypes that you can send out? How do you get conceptual utility without having a physical product you can send?
When you say utility, you mean usefulness? So make sure I understand the question. How do you measure utility?
Yeah. Do you guys have a model for generally measuring whether or not a consumer will find it a useful product? Because you can use intuition to be like, yeah, this is obviously a great idea, or
Yeah.
but in order to like really, I guess, hone in on your market,
Yeah.
to know what good and how useful.
No, and we've done similar kind of market surveys where would you buy this thing, and if so, how much would you spend for it? Certainly, that's definitely something that we do often, just because we want to understand even not just is there a market, but what's the price point, and because that'll inform the financial model, which will help us get a sense of margins and everything else. So again, even just some basic internet-based survey kind of stuff could give you some of that data.
We can do some of the benefit car.
Yeah.
Like this is actually working really well because nobody remembers what anybody pays for anything. So you list it for $285,000 at the instance. People buy it, it's worth that. Then you lower it by $10 and list it on a different website in the same target market. Like Craigslist is one of the things. Yeah. Because when people search on Craigslist, they only search for, they don't search for things higher than numbers. So if you're looking to buy a widget on Craigslist, you're going to search for things $100 or less. So if your product's $120, it's not going to show up. So you don't alienate your market share by doing by lowering them down. You alienate everybody if you raise your price. But if you lower your price, then you just do. But you have to have prototypes if you want to do that. Somebody has to have something to buy. Yeah. I don't know how to make utility.
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. But,
Thinking from a step, well, I don't have anything in mind, but that's like always my first thought process as far as steps is like, okay, I have this theoretical idea in my head, but there's no way I can even really test this idea. I mean, I can ask people, but people don't know what they want unless they're ready to act.
And
Yeah.
also why.
Yeah, exactly.
So how much do you think this is worth? $100, $200? They don't care because their skin's in the game.
And it's exactly like asking yourself because you're in love with your product already.
Right.
oh yeah, especially if it's a friend or a family, because, they're going to tell you, oh, that's great.
And my friends all say it's really good.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't need the product, it's not worth anything.
Well, that's the thing, but your need and my need is different than everybody else's need. I mean, Beta's a failure in the popular nights, but every single piece of professional videography in the last 30 years was better than Beta. So Beta decimated and totally had 100% control of broadcast media up until HD came out. And even now, there's still digital Beta cams that is used for production television. So the Sony guys made a stack of money off their Beta patents, but it wasn't the right choice for consumers even though it was technically superior. So I'm sure all the Sony executives around network are high-fiving each other about 100% market share in broadcast. And I missed the Beta. When we went to VHS, I clearly saw a difference.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate your time, and I hope that was good information. I got cards up here. Happy to, have follow-on discussions, and I said appreciate your time.
Yes,